Pennsylvania Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman has officially entered the race for Republican Senator Pat Toomey's Senate seat in 2022 since Toomey is retiring. He spoke to MSNBC earlier this week on a multitude of issues, including ending the filibuster.
Would you support ending the filibuster if you're in the Senate?
Yes, I would. And here's why, because these are some of fundamental changes that are truths. Like if you don't support raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour, I want you to live and work for $7.25 an hour and show me how you can actually get by or feed your family, quite frankly. And in order to get those kind of important things passed, whether it's climate change or things like that, you need to get rid of the filibuster. You know, this idea that some random senator from a state with 600,000 people can hold up the Democratic will and the sense of urgency that these policies are coming from, I don't think that's very democratic at its core.
He also answered whether or not he believes himself to be too progressive.
You were a big backer, of course, of Senator Bernie Sanders' presidential campaign back in 2016, former Sanders supporter yourself. Is there a concern among those advising you, or do you have the concern that perhaps you are too progressive for where Pennsylvania voters are right now?
No. I mean, I'm lieutenant governor, the second highest office holder. So, you know, Pennsylvania must like something of what I stand for. And I don't consider my policies progressive. I mean, it's a mathematical fact. You can't live off $7.25 an hour. It's a mathematical, it's a biological fact that you're going to need health care and everyone should have access to health care. It's a scientific fact that the climate is changing and we have to address it. You know, the LGBTQ community deserves just equal protection under the law. Marijuana was legalized in South Dakota. How the hell are we behind South Dakota on any issue?
Here to discuss the Lieutenant Governor's run for Senate, friend of the show, D.C. Bureau Chief at The Intercept, Ryan Grimm. Ryan, good to see you, man. This is really interesting. Crystal and I have had John Fetterman here on the show. I've watched him with some interest because I can see that he's both become a hero amongst these like MSNBC wine mom suburban people because he was on the air constantly during the election fraud, stuff and trolling the Texas Attorney General more. But he's also like kind of a Bernie bro. And so he really does have the nexus there that might put him over the top. How do you see his candidacy and then the state of that race?
Well, you saw some of his political skills on display there. First of all, he gets asked about the filibuster and he immediately pivots to why it matters, the minimum wage, because nobody cares about the filibuster. People care about whether or not the minimum wage is going to get raised, and if he can connect that to the filibuster, there he goes. And progressives love to say that they hold majoritarian views. That they love to trot out the polling data for all of their core beliefs, but then they use language that then kind of marginalizes their position. Whereas Fetterman goes in the opposite direction. You heard him say, I don't even know if I'm progressive. And then he ticks off, a list of core progressive tenets, but puts them in very common sense language and mocks the state of Pennsylvania for being behind South Dakota. And so that's how you kind of cross the different factions of the Democratic Party. There are going to be some more traditional politicians in this race, most likely. Connor Lamb is very likely to get into this Senate race. I think, there's going to be redistricting in Pennsylvania, and it's very likely that they target his seat. He wins by 4 digits each time, and so no matter how good a politician he is, if they can throw in another 30,000 Republicans into that district, he's in a lot of trouble. And he's been told. He believes that he's kind of the blue dog hope of Pennsylvania. So, he would kind of run as that standard bearer in that race. Another candidate who's thinking about getting in, according to people around Pennsylvania, is State Representative Malcolm Kenyatta from Philadelphia. He was a very early Biden supporter, but Philadelphia has gone pretty far left over the last several years, and he's kind of moved left with it, except for the fact that he's been, he was such an outspoken Biden supporter. So if he can rally some progressive Philadelphia support, maybe that takes a bite out of Fetterman and creates some space for Connor Lamb. But I do think it's Fetterman's race to lose at this point.
Yeah, and Fetterman, look, what do progressives always get tarred with, just like she tried to do to him there? Well, are you electable? He's like, I already got elected statewide. So kind of kills that argument. Not to mention, I mean, this guy, he came up as the mayor of a steel town. I mean, he is from and of an industrial, Midwestern, quote-unquote, Rust Belt city. So I don't think it's just that he's well-positioned for the primary. I think he's extraordinarily well-positioned for a general election to have a lot of crossover working-class support.
And what we saw in the 2020 presidential primary is that Democratic voters are quite driven by this idea of electability. And embedded within that is some kind of is a racial lens and is kind of a cultural lens. And so, Joe Biden being the middle class guy from Scranton, he scanned to a lot of Democratic voters as, well, this is somebody that those Republicans that I don't understand will be willing to cross over and vote for. Fetterman, even though he was a Bernie supporter in 2016, scans the same way to a lot of those kind of suburban Democratic voters. They say, maybe I don't necessarily jibe with that diner style that he has, but they assume that other people will. And in Pennsylvania, they actually assume correctly. He does perform, considerably better among white working class Republicans and independents across Pennsylvania than a typical Democrat does. And like you said, he's got that statewide win under his belt already, where Connor Lamb is geographically isolated to Western Pennsylvania, the Pittsburgh area. Kenyatta isolated as he's a state representative just in Philadelphia, and so having that translate statewide in such a complex state can be difficult.
He's already raised a lot of money. He's good on TV. I think it's his to lose. All right, Ryan, thanks for joining us, man. Really appreciate it.
Got it.
Coming up, Nikki Haley's got a defense of capitalism for PragerU, and we're going to just talk about that when Rising continues.